This beautiful, award-winning stained glass window of the Transfiguration, which won Best in the Nation award and was featured on the cover of a national liturgical magazine, almost cost us our friendship.
It certainly was a project that required a lot of discussion.
A lot of discussion.
For me, it started while we were looking at the cupola glass and while we were working on the hanging banner for over the font. There was a wall here that was about to come down, and Monsignor said, while we're talking about this, I want to show you something else, and brought me back and said that he had the vision of having this window that was not part of the sanctuary space at that time, that he had the vision to make this the Transfiguration.
I think that was the original vision of the architects.
Yeah. My theological and my background in religions, I started basing my concept of the imagery directly and maybe even forcefully on the exact words of Scripture.
Which said nothing about the length of Christ's hair.
Actually,
no, it doesn't.
There is
no. You listen.
Yes, sir.
I read an article just the other week that said Jesus probably had short hair. So there.
Well, at one point in the Bible, he is referred to, he's seen at a distance, and he's referred to as a Nazarene. And there were certain specific things about their expression where the men would grow the fetlocks and wouldn't cut their beard and let their hair grow.
So he was an exception.
Okay. This is the discussion that we had.
It wasn't a discussion, it was an argument. I wanted a contemporary looking Christ that our kids could look at and say, whoa, I could meet him on the streets. He looks human. Well, I guess you anticipated what's going on now with people not getting a haircut. But he insisted he had to have the long beard and the long hair parted in the middle that looks like he has just come out of a beauty shop. And I guarantee you, Christ was never in a beauty shop. I guarantee it.
But we did have some compromise.
Had we not had a compromise, he would not have done the window. The compromise was the open collar, which suggests human. It's never been this difficult before. Vulnerability. The open collar vulnerability when he is showing himself as the glorified Christ is precisely the point. The glorified Christ was still fully human and fully divine. It was the apex of the incarnation that human form becomes glorified in the will of the Father. So on that point, I won.
I don't think I won. I think we accomplished a wonderful work of art together.
That's why it won the national award.
Okay.
It's the open collar.
All right. There are lots of nuances in the window.
And things we agree on. That just the playfulness, the toes, they are not just flat toes. There's texture. You can feel the toes. Somebody would say, who cares? I think it's those kind of touches that make it such a remarkable work, except for the haircut.
So with Christ, are Peter, James, and John. And we know it's Peter because he has the keys. It's kind of a little heavy-handed imagery. And James and John are fishermen. He's holding a fishing gaff. But James is in red because he was martyred. And John is in blue because he went to Ephesus with Mary. In the window, there is a distinct difference between the temporal, where all of the color is, and the spiritual, that is the cloud of light.
The Transfiguration.
Within the cloud of light, there's also the figures of Moses and Elijah.
You got to look for them.
They represent
Law and the prophet.
law and prophecy. Yeah. And
there are people who have been here for years, and they would say to me much later, I just noticed Moses and Elijah.
Yeah. When I first started, I wanted to make the cloud of light have a certain activity in it, so that it really wasn't just a static thing. And I used these tiny fractures of glass fused onto the back side, along with streamers that are directional, so that the cloud of light has movement within it, even though it's essentially just clear and white glass.
Except around the image. And he put blue flakes to kind of emphasize the brightness of the Christ figure.
Yeah.
Almost a shadowing, so that the Christ figure would stand out even more transfigured.
A lot of stained glass is cold formed, or worked cold, where you score it and break it and cut it into pieces. Some of the glass in this was done in what's called warm glass, where it is kiln formed, where one piece of glass is laid on top of another, and then it's taken up to a temperature where the glass will fuse together and become a single piece. And that's apparent in the eyes and faces of the figures, but also the same process. All of these pieces of fracture and streamer glass are also kiln formed, where no glass was available that was exactly what I wanted, and so I had to end up making the pieces of glass the way I wanted them to be. And from the scripture, his raiments were as white as the light, and his face shone like the sun. So in this window, Christ, the face, the hands, the toes, are the least dense glass. And on the feast day, that first year, when we dedicated the window, it was a dreary, cloudy day.
Like this.
And just as the window was sprinkled, the sun burst through the clouds, and the light streamed into this section of the church, and his face literally at that moment shone like the sun.
Is there a time when it just radiates that light? 5 o'clock Mass. The unique perspective of walking in procession, we walk all the way around the church. And when you first walk in, the magnificence of the light through that image is so bright, I can't see the congregation gathered here. I really have a hard time seeing where I'm walking. On a bright sunny day, when that sun is hitting it directly, you get a feeling for the Transfiguration.
And it's most apparent on August 6th, on the feast day.
Is it?
Yeah. That's when the sun is most optimal for where the face of Christ is located in the window.
But the difference is, you couldn't arrange this window for the sunlighting like you did The cupola.
No.
God had his hand in this one. Listen, I am so grateful to him. The president's chair is probably the best angle to see this. And I look at it during the readings, during the meditation music. And sometimes the Son does remarkable things with his imagery. Sometimes the Christ is giving me a great big smile like, attaboy, I'm proud of you. And sometimes I get a look like, hey, you can do better than this. It's such a personal, again, living, changing, vibrant image of the transfigured Christ, but his humanity.